Later on, after the 10 o'clock news, we'll talk to Dr. Wasif Saif. He is with Carmonas Cancer Institute. And then after that, we'll have open phones during the 10 o'clock hour. At 11 o'clock, we will learn about recovery, the Recovery Network, recovery-friendly workplace is what it's called. That'll come along after the 11 o'clock news. But for this hour, we're going to talk a little fire apparatus and all that good stuff, because we are blessed in this area to have something very rare, actually. In Bay City is the Antique Toy and Firehouse Museum, which is also the home to the one and the only, because it was a one-off, the New York City Super Pumper. And come to find out, there was also at the same time a super tanker, and they have been reunited. We're going to find out about that this morning from a couple of folks. First of all, with us from the Firehouse Museum, we say good morning to Mike Snyder again. Mike, good morning.
Well, good morning, Art, and thanks for having me join you today to share this wonderful news of the tender and the super pumper getting reunited as of yesterday.
And I remember you were here several months ago saying, yeah, we're going to get it from California. And I'm going, oh, yeah? But you had a little help, didn't you?
We absolutely did. And
we have a guest with us on the phone. Introduce him to us.
Yeah, and joining us on the call really is a number one supporter of this iconic move, Stuart McMillan, who's the former CEO and owner of Task Force Tips in Valparaiso, Indiana.
They make firehouse nozzles.
Right, big firehouse nozzles, both for operational efficiency and firefighter safety. It was a change-the-game technology in the late 1970s and early 1980s. He and his wife, Catherine, came up to visit our museum this summer, and they gave us a $100,000 challenge grant, specifically focused on the super pumper and tender. And really with that, number one, an iconic technologist in the fire service area, and then a fire service history buff. He'll talk a lot about why he's so psyched about the super pumper and super tender. But really, I'm honored to introduce Stuart as a benevolent supporter of this important project.
Stuart, good morning to you.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Thanks for being with us today.
Well, my pleasure.
I have to tell you, I was a firefighter in the 60s before your nozzle technology. I got lifted off the ground more than once because I'm a lightweight. I ended up driving most of the time. I was a chauffeur.
That was one of the problems we helped solve.
Yeah, well, I wish you had done it a lot earlier. Oh, my goodness gracious. I'll never forget that. They put me on the end of the hose, and I think the fire chief thought it was funny to see how much I could handle, and it wasn't a lot because it took me right off the ground. Anyhow, you've been involved in the fire service how long now?
Well, when I was 2 years old, I rode home on the knee of a Chicago firefighter, and he let me ring the bell on the way back to the station. So I think you could say pretty much since birth. But my dad was a very avid fire buff, and that's actually how we got in contact with the super pumper originally. We went to New York to ride on that truck to hopefully find a big fire, and spent the entire weekend. Didn't have a single call.
It didn't go out all that much. I mean, it was
not much. And then on Sunday afternoon.
By the way, I'm a New Yorker, and I was living in New York during that time. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we were headed through the Lincoln Tunnel going home, disappointed, and heard a call for the super pumper to do demolition, to knock down a wall. Mm-hmm. And my dad looked at me and said, should we go back? And I was like 15 years old and said, hell yes. And we did a U-turn at the toll booth and got there in time to pull the hose off the tender. And you've probably seen that picture in the article that was written. But
yeah.
So, I mean, when I was 9 years old, Popular Science came out with a cover story about that truck being built. And I was looking at my grandson the other day, who's 9 years old, and realizing that he is the same age I was when I first heard of that truck. And it truly is one of a kind. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of things where it's the last remaining fire truck, but not the case where it's the one and only.
Yeah, it was the last remaining from the time it was built.
Yeah, exactly. And
I'll tell you a funny
it's an
story.
amazing piece of engineering, the largest fire truck in the world by far.
I'll tell you a funny story about Mack trucks. I was in the fire department in New Jersey, and when we bought a new pumper, we bought a Mack C85F. This was in the 60s. And the fire chief, in all his wisdom, paid Mack to take the cab off. He wanted a parade truck. His excuse was, well, I can stand up when we get to the scene and survey. And right. This was at a time when New York City was putting cabs on everything they could find.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my goodness. Never forget that.
Well, my dad's nickname was Mac, and so he always had a Mac Bulldog on his desk. And I had a 1960 Volkswagen with a Mac Bulldog on the front of a Volkswagen.
So how did you get into the fire nozzle business?
My father was a fireman. He was injured severely at a fire because of a problem with a nozzle, and he cooked on that for several years. And then one day at lunch, drew it on a napkin, and a new design for how to control the pressure. That napkin is now hanging on the wall of the company. We found it years after his death. And he went out thinking that he would sell the idea to all the major manufacturers and wrote them all a letter, and nobody responded. And then one day, one of the competitors stole the idea. And he went to a trade show to see it introduced and came home from that trade show telling the family, we're going to go into competition against those guys. And we're all like, okay, we're going to have you committed. You are crazy. These are two big major companies. We can't possibly do this. We're going to do it.
So I assume because of the fact that they were able to steal the product, he had not patented it?
He did patent it. He gave up to the one competitor came back at a very inopportune time and offered him $500 for the idea. And my dad knew that he couldn't win against him, so he gave him the rights to the patent for $750.
Wow.
But they totally did it without his permission in advance. But so we started making fire nozzles in the basement of our home. We had an 18-foot diameter swimming pool in the backyard with a pump off of a fire truck, a crash truck. It was a lot of fun to play in the pool when we weren't testing nozzles. But it just grew and grew. And then in 1982, I was fighting a fire with my father in the basement of a home, and he collapsed. And I got him outside with help of another firefighter. He was a big man. And he had a heart attack. And in today's world, it would have been a line of duty death because it happened a couple of days. He passed away like 4 days after the fire. But at the time, it was not classified that way unless it happened at the scene. So I, at the age of 27, became president of the company and found out I had an awful lot to learn. So
Yeah. But the company is still in existence today.
Oh, yeah, it's growing and growing. And I sold it in 2017 and used some of the proceeds to do projects like the Super Pumper, but also to build a fire academy in Northwest Indiana, which is now the largest in the state. And we train fire, police, and EMS, and it's called the Mack Foundation. And if you're familiar with the story, It's a Wonderful Life. The little girl at the end says every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. And for me, every time I hear the word Mac, a firefighter gets trained properly.
Yeah, that's
interesting. It's a 30-acre campus. We have over 25 buildings, and we're building a $6 million facility right now for headquarters. So
very good, very good. All right, we're going to take a break, so hang on, and Mike will be back and find out about the arrival of the Super Tender and all of that here on WSGW, and we will be back right after these notes.
Hi, this is Greg Reamer, and on behalf of everyone...
And they were both rescued out of that salvage yard. Mr. Dobson got the Super Pumper, and a family by the name of Huey Wick from Southern California rescued the Super Tender.
And how long before you found out where the Super Tender was, and then how long before you were able to actually obtain it?
Right. So the Wick family has displayed the unit since 1989. They did a substantial amount of restoration in the early 1990s. So we were generally aware. Starting right around the COVID timeframe, the museum started to build a more structured relationship with the Wicks. And unfortunately, about 2 years ago, Huey passed away. And then we started conversations with his widow about, kind of this long-term vision about getting the two units together. And we were able to essentially put that into motion in the first part of this year. And then there were a few things that had to happen. I mean, obviously, in a perfect world, we would have transferred this truck in August when it was warm and beautiful. We ended up just with some logistical issues and getting the unit ready to run. We wanted to get it out of Mrs. Wick's property, and that's why we ended up doing it and freezing our backsides off here in the month of December.
And you told me it made a stop on the way in Valparaiso?
Well, Stuart, you can share the news there.
Well, I met it at a truck stop because I had to get a picture of me petting that Mack Bulldog.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
2 semis, they had it broken in half to get it on the 2 trucks. 2 very friendly truck drivers who communicated with me all the way. It worked out just wonderful.
So, it's one thing to have been in the fire service. It's quite another to sort of put your money where your mouth is, to reunite these things in Bay City, Michigan. What led you to do that?
Well, it takes a little bit of crazy to be in business in the first place, and I guess I got a multiple dose of it. So, my wife and I went up there camping, and I went up there with the intention of helping some. And after meeting the guys and seeing what they were doing, and we camped out in their parking lot, it just felt right to make sure that this thing happened, that they had enough resources to not only move it here, but also get it fixed up and running so they can display it. So
I have to ask you, Stuart, when you came up here the first time and you walked in the door, what were your first thoughts when you laid eyes on that super pumper after how many years?
I've had 2 occurrences in the last year where I also bought an old Corvair Greenbrier and had no expectation that when I sat in the front seat of it, the memories of my father would flood back. And it happened, that same thing happened when I saw the super pumper up there. It was just such a part of my life the whole time growing up. I just admired it. I marveled at it. It's just so unique. And, boy, I was cooked. My goose was cooked the minute I saw it. I mean, it needs a lot of work, but I had a steam fire engine in my business on display, and we were going to restore it. And one day, one of my engineers said, Grandma doesn't look the same without her wrinkles. And I said, what's that supposed to mean? He says, you shouldn't restore it. This is the way it is. Preserve it, keep it the way it is, and if that's all you do, it still is a big win. And so I kind of felt the same way about the pumper. Even if they never get it restored, if they can keep it the way it is, it still is a marvel of engineering.
Yeah,
and,
I think their intention is to pump. Mike?
I sure hope so.
That's our goal, and obviously with the gracious challenge grant that Stuart and Catherine provided for us, we're going to work as we get the super tender road ready so that we can take it to different shows and events here in the Mid-Michigan area. The next big step with the super pumper is there's a huge locomotive engine called the Napier Deltic. It was built in the UK. It's mechanically intact. It's going to need some work on, I'm going to call it the wiring in the other parts of that system, but we've already started some conversations with people in the UK who preserve these types of engines, and so we got to get some catalytic energy, and I'm talking more about people who are in the diesel mechanics area, but obviously with the funds that have been made available with the challenge grant, we're going to, I think, be able to have the critical mass to do that.
Just out of curiosity, is the pump free turning?
Yes.
It's not frozen.
No. So, and basically you have this huge locomotive engine driving an industrial DeLaval pump, and that pump can pump up to 7,700 gallons per minute at moderate pressure and in half that rate at high pressure at about 800 PSIG.
So you'll need to go down to Saginaw River to suck water.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, this was not one you hooked to one fire hydrant. I think the water authorities would not look kindly upon that.
Not kindly at all. Not kindly at all. So Stuart, I'm very curious about the workings of your nozzle and how it literally has changed firefighting in many ways. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's as simple as the last time you put your thumb on a garden hose. When you put your thumb on a garden hose, what changed? The pressure. But why did the pressure change? Well, it changed because you reduced the flow. And when you reduce the flow coming out, the pressure loss in the hose is reduced and there's more pressure left over at the end. And so what my father's design was quite simple. It was a spring that moved a thumb, if you will, on the end of the fire nozzle. And so the pressure was always correct, whether it was 5 gallons of water coming through it or 150 gallons of water. And so the fireman could then use the valve to regulate the amount of water being delivered to what he could handle, and the nozzle would then put the correct pressure to it. So it was like giving a fireman a throttle, a foot pedal, an accelerator pedal for the nozzle. They could, for the first time in history, control the flow at the end of the nozzle instead of back at the truck.
And then did they also have control of the spray pattern?
Yes. Yeah, it was called a combination nozzle. It had fog and straight stream. And, back in the Ben Franklin days, it was just a hole. Yeah. Unfortunately, I won't get into how many fire departments still use just a hole. That's a separate controversy, but this nozzle fundamentally, and worldwide, it's been highly accepted. They've left the smooth bores in the museums, but in the United States, there's still a lot of people that believe a solid stream is more effective. And eventually physics will win out, and they'll learn that's not true, but that won't be in my lifetime.
All right, hang on. I'm going to take a break. We'll be back talking to Stuart McMillan, who is a major donor to the Antique Toy and Firehouse Museum in Bay City for the acquisition of the super tender that goes with the super pumper they already had. Mike Snyder with us from the museum, and we'll talk a little bit about the museum because it's moving on to stage 2 of its new home. We'll talk about that too.
This Christmas Eve, let's pause.
And we're back with you on the Art Lewis Show. Mike Snyder from the Antique Toy and Firehouse Museum in Bay City with us. Also Stuart McMillan, who has been involved in the fire service one way or another all his life and was a major donor to the acquisition of the super tender, which is paired up now with its super pumper for the first time in decades and decades at the Bay City Firehouse Museum. Mike, so that everybody understands, explain how the museum came about and how the name Jimmy Dobson is involved.
At the end of the Korean War, Jimmy Dobson started collecting fire trucks, not toys, but fire trucks.
Just as a hobby.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was involved with the Bangor Township Fire Department as a volunteer, and that was kind of the tie that occurred there. And so for a number of years, and I mean I'm talking 40 years, he was buying and selling fire trucks. The collection grew to about 105 trucks. And during that time frame, then he also got enamored with buying firefighting toys. And so what kind of started, at swap markets and flea markets and things like that, the collection has grown to about 16,500 toys. In 2022, his collection and his family donated that to a public foundation, a 501c3, which is managed now by a board of directors, a public board of directors. And we, there are really two things that does. Number one is it gives us a broader base by which we can do fundraising and draw volunteers. But also it's something that will allow this really, really wonderful collection to live forever, right? It's not then in the standpoint of Jimmy Dobson, and if when he passes, that all of a sudden the collection goes away. It's now really kind of it's managed into perpetuity. And that was, obviously for the Dobson family, that was a huge positive donation to the community because there's a lot of people, right now about 2/3 of the people who visit our museum are not from the local community. They're tourists or others that are coming here. So it really becomes kind of an anchor in that area. Mr. Dobson, by the way, was braving the cold yesterday, sitting in a truck, watching these units come off the flatbeds that were shipped. So he still stays very actively involved with museum operations, although obviously slowing down, being in his 90s.
I mean, and the thing about it, and Stuart, you can comment on this too, for Bay City to have a museum of this stature, this museum could be taken and its footprint dropped in any major city, and you'd say, okay, yeah, it figures they have a big firehouse museum. To have it in Bay City is so unique and so unusual. It is a destination museum. Stuart?
I would agree with that. Actually, just yesterday, I was at the Aurora Fire Museum over in Aurora, Illinois, which, much to my surprise, Aurora is the second largest city in the state. And their fire museum didn't have a fraction of the items that the toy museum has. Much, much smaller place, but yet a critical part of the community. So I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think, Art, the other part here is this museum is run, managed, and maintained entirely by volunteers.
Yeah.
I mean, we have people who have tremendous passion for this history mission that's there, and so that that makes this museum also very different.
Okay, it also takes money to make a museum work like this work. So how are you supported?
So, I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, we rely not only on admissions to the museum, so people who visit the museum pay a fee, but obviously memberships, which we have both a lifetime membership at $1,000, an annual membership at $100, and then the gracious donations of, again, things people like Stuart and Catherine, who gave us a challenge grant. Some of the local foundations have been very generous here as we're working on our other major project, which is our Firehouse Museum on Washington Avenue, the old station number 3. And then we also do get in-kind donations and support from people who help us with other maintenance operations. Obviously, we run on a very small budget, very efficient in what we do, but you're right. It takes money to preserve these historical
didn't get
assets.
This tender for nothing.
That is correct.
And it was just to transport it was how much?
Well, I mean, it was a $30,000 project to just transport it
it
across the country. Correct.
Yeah. Wow, it's amazing, and it takes a lot of people to support and operate something like that, including folks like Stuart, obviously, who's been a very generous contributor. Stuart, when you came up here, the first time you stepped foot in the museum, and I asked you about seeing the super tank, the super pumper, what were your expectations coming up here to see the museum?
Well, I think they were the same as what I had getting up there. I looked at the website. In the modern day, you have a lot more opportunity to look at these things in advance. So I pretty well knew what I was going to see. But there's a difference between actually doing it and looking at it. So my father taught me about the birds and the bees that way, actually.
All right, hang on. I'm going to take one more break here, and then we'll come back. I want to talk a little bit about the transformation to the new firehouse, and we will do that with our guests when we return here on the Art Lewis Show. Let me take a moment to talk about your tires, because we have winter driving going on up here, and you may wonder, is there a difference between a winter tire and the tire you use year-round on your automobile? The answer is yes, and you can find out a lot more about that by going out to Quick Lane Freeland at McDonald Ford. They will be glad to tell you all about it, and I've asked John from Quick Lane Freeland to do that right now.
Hello, Art. Yes, winter tires are made with a pliable rubber compound that includes silica to stay flexible and maintain grip in freezing temperatures. Unlike harder all-season tires, which stiffen and lose traction in the cold, this flexible compound allows the tire to better conform to the road surface, providing superior grip and traction on snow and ice to keep you safe.
Thanks, John. And remember this, too, at Quick Lane Freeland, all tires are sold at just $5 over cost. Quick Lane Freeland on the McDonald Ford property, Stop out, have them check your tires, have them check your cooling system while you're there. And all your routine maintenance can be done at Quick Lane Freeland. If you're interested in a new car, take a look at the Ford lineup at McDonald Ford, as well as their pre-owned lot with vehicles for every budget. Stop in today, Quick Lane Freeland and McDonald Ford, two names ready to help you with all your automotive needs.
Bonnie's Sewing Center is having a huge holiday sale. Right now you can get the very best prices on everything Janome, Baby Lock, Husqvarna, Viking, and Bernina. This includes top-of-the-line embroidery machines, sergers, long arms, and more. With every purchase, Bonnie's Sewing
Back with you. We are talking to Mike Snyder from the Antique Toy and Firehouse Museum in Bay City at 3456 Patterson Road, and also Stuart McMillan, who is a benefactor of the museum and their efforts to marry together the New York City Super Pumper and now the New York City Super Tender. They are side by side. There will be a marriage ceremony at some point. So, Mike, I'd be remiss if we didn't spend just a couple of minutes talking about the move of the museum to a new headquarters, if you will.
Sure. So just for reminding everybody, in 2019, the museum was able to procure Old Bay City Fire Station number 3. It was built in 1890 on Washington Avenue near Columbus. It was designed by Pratt and Cope, which was the prolific architecture firm, the same architecture firm that designed Bay City City Hall. It was a fire station from 1890 to 1917. So for more than 100 years, it was not a fire station. So the bones are pretty good in the building, but lots of things were done to it in those 100 years. We had to first undo those things. And we're working right now on a 4-stage restoration. Stage 1, phase 1 is done. And as if we didn't have enough things going on this week, we actually start construction on phase 2 this week, which will basically be a mandatory secondary stairwell from the ground floor all the way up to the 3rd story. And then we will be starting to outfit the 3rd story of the building, and then the next 2 phases are 2nd and ground floor. So a lot of excitement here. I think we're getting catalytic energy. We have a number of grantors and donors who've helped us here. And again, you drive by the building now, it looks like it did in 1890. We have many window displays there, but we hope to have that open to the public. And again, I'm an optimistic guy. By the end of next year, we should be able to then hold public tours.
Obviously, fire truck collection can't all move there. It can only hold how many vehicles?
Yep, so on the ground floor, and it depends on, if we bring the Super Pumper and Tender down, there'll be room for maybe one more in that area, right? So it really, we will then be doing things like traditional museums where the collection will be on display on a rotational basis.
So Patterson stays open too, right?
As both an archival and a maintenance facility. And, we have, as more and more people become interested in our collection, we have people who are very interested on a specific truck. We'll always open up and provide a tour and historical support for those pieces of research that are going on. So both will work in combination. The Washington Avenue one will be, number one, a year-round facility with both an education and an event center. So it'll be a principal museum. Patterson Road will be open for special occasions for archival and maintenance purposes.
Stuart, so now you've got a mark on your calendar, of course, when the new building is finished. And come on up for that, don't you think?
Hasn't given me a date.
They'll get you a date, I'm sure.
I would like to be there, that's for sure.
It is. I mean, this is really a rarity in terms of museums, and to have it in Bay City is a blessing. I mean, it's that unique, truly unique, particularly before you ever got the Super Pumper. I mean, it was still unique.
Correct. And the thing I kind of say, we do 3 things. Right, we're preserving the history of fire and emergency response in the Great Lake region and go back more than 150 years. The second thing is we educate, not only about that history, but we sneak in a lot of science, technology, and math, and we make that fun. So people don't understand they're getting trained. Kids don't understand that, but we're really advancing the mission there. And then we celebrate. both the technology and the bravery that has happened in this organized